I currently live at home again with my family due to pandemic. I have been brought up with my own unique family system. There is trauma. I also believe from past lives living in our family. I'm sure in every family. I've gone through some years where I blamed them for what they had done, etc. I guess you could you kind of go through that period. Now, some years later, you start to see through all these stories you have told yourself and your family, and you kind of over keeping the stories alive. But then there is still this feeling when I am with them that there is complexity trauma being experienced, especially between my mum, dad, and me. And to be honest, it's difficult how to navigate this. I love them. I see them getting older, the hair turning fully grey, and I start to realise I don't want to hold a grudge against them anymore. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I just want to have it simple, even with my mum and dad too. I feel this dualism confusion, so I was wondering, do you maybe have any advice on how I could navigate this? Hope that makes sense. Thanks and much love to you, Joan. Hey Joan, thanks for your question. Yeah, and that's a tense to go back home because of the pandemic. I can understand that. So I'm going to answer your question in two stages. I first of all want to talk about your question from the perspective of non-duality. So in the person, there is the idea to resolve all these things and to understand these things, and that can be helpful. That is a different subject in a way to non-duality. You could say that as the person becomes more free, then there is like a dropping more into non-duality. But really, from the perspective of non-duality, there is a belief that there is a you with trauma and a parents with trauma. Whereas actually that's a story that you are telling each other, or telling yourself. Maybe they don't talk about it. But it's a story that you've been taught in duality, in society. And then there is this idea that you would like to resolve that because more than likely it's painful. So more than likely interacting with them, there is pain that's acted out. But all of that is stories. This idea that there is a you there with trauma that's going to become free and going to have a simple life when you sort it out with them. This can become a new seeking. The idea to have perfect relationships. The idea to get perfect navigation. And when you think you can do that, then you think that life will be fulfilling, or life will be more free. Maybe you think you'll be more in the moment. You'll be less seeking. And none of it's true. Where is this you right now with trauma? Who is this you with trauma? Who has trauma? And notice that you can only find an answer in the mind. So even if you say there is no me, that's an answer in the mind. But more than likely what happens is you imagine yourself with a trauma, but that's in the mind. And what's happening right now? Where is this you with trauma? Where is this limitation And where is this trauma? Who is this you? So your mind might scream, me, me, me. But actually, right here, right now, there is simply space. None of it matters. There is nothing happening. And yet seemingly there is everything happening. There's this clearness, this pureness, this aliveness. Just knowing this deeply, coming to see this deeply. Deeply, 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 but it's not your activity. It can be relaxing for the person if you keep breaking the attention of the mind and bringing it back to this present moment, but it's not exactly that. That's still an effort of the person. This consciousness is never affected by anything. It feels like it is when this is like the person and the consciousness and one and the same thing, but it's actually never affected. It's huge, it's expansive, it's free. It's free. So that's my first part of my answer. The second part of the answer is to then we can look at the seeking pattern. Because what happens is these seeking patterns can be strong, and so therefore there is a lot of pull of energy into the timeline. So we can actually explore that, and it can relax that pull of energy that's pulling you into past and future. So the story is how to deal with this trauma. You can deal with the trauma inside of yourself, but you have to be realistic about your relationships. If the other people aren't prepared to do the work, then it's always going to be a little bit like walking with them with someone without a leg. Like walking without a leg, because you can't do all the work for them and fix it. So say if the trauma is, I don't know, so I'm thinking that what it results in is them treating you in a passive-aggressive way. And then the feelings that erupt in you when they treat you in a passive-aggressive way, you can only look at your feelings and your response to that and notice that and notice what happens. You can't stop them from doing that. You can't behave in a way which stops them. You can maybe try to speak to them about it and shift it a bit, but until they are dedicated to working on themselves, they're not going to shift that energy. Hey, hello. So it's always going to be one-sided. So that's one thing to say. So there is going to be a certain amount of pain that just has to be accepted in those relationships. If they were prepared to evolve and work on themselves, then you could evolve together and you could bring radical honesty to it, which would begin to heal it, I'm sure. So then it's kind of like you just have to work on yourself and just accept that there is going to be pain there if they're not prepared to work on themselves. So it's then just finding to me, it's like finding a way in which it has the least amount of impact on you. So if they are doing these passive aggressive things, like, navigating it so it has the least amount of impact on you, and you try to be as honest and open, as genuine as you can. So what I do is I just try to tell people how I feel. It doesn't always manifest, but I just try to tell people how I feel. Not teach them, not preach them, but just tell them how I feel. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I get stuck in trauma and I freeze, or I get pleasing. It's just noticing and recognizing that, and also recognizing that this is a lifelong work. It's a lifelong expansion, and the freedom is beyond that. It's that which is experiencing it. There's also like loads of things you can do online. There's loads of people speaking about trauma. There's loads of workshops that you can do to try to shift that out of your body as well. To me, it's becoming more and more radically honest. Like, I'm really feeling it in your body and really getting used to that feeling in the body. So when I do this, and there's deeper and deeper levels. There's many times I'm unconscious with trauma, like I become pleasing, and it's really like underneath that there's a subtle trauma acting out. Saying like they're going to kill me or something. Like on the deep level, it's like they're going to kill me, they're going to hurt me, I'm going to die. But on the ultimate level, it's all story. In this moment, you are free. Right here. You are free. Dee 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 dee. Boop beep boop beep boop. Boop beep boop beep boop. Boop beep boop beep boop. You are free. Who is free? Who is free? Who let the dogs out? Who is free? Just becoming more and more authentically yourself. Just being yourself. Right here, just letting life speak you, letting life move you. And that's your authentic self. That doesn't mean without trauma. That doesn't mean you don't say to someone, I feel vulnerable, I feel scared now. It's in that actually you're being authentically yourself, and in that you disappear. So there's no judgment. If anger arises, crying arises, joy arises, it's like coming to the depth of it. So there's no you in relationship with it. It's just as it is. Thank you, Joan, for your question.